Greetings from EPG Pathshala. In this module, I am going to talk about forensic detection. I would start my discussion with discussing about what is computer forensic. Then we will discuss how the evidence can be tracked and can be preserved. We will also discuss about the free space and slack space and how we should maintain the spaces so that our evidence can be preserved and cannot be overwritten. We will be talking about the data hiding techniques as well. In that, we will talk about steganography. To start my discussion, first we will talk about computer forensics. We all have used the watched the serials, the crime serials, which has talked about the forensic reports. But here we are just changing the paradigm and saying that what is a computer forensic. So it is nothing but collecting evidence while a hacker is in the midst of a computer break-in of a major company. So a major company's computer has been hacked and now collection of evidence is to be done to find out who has done this, or conducting a computer investigation after the fact to analyze electronic evidence that can be used in the court. The question is, when we are doing forensics, which are the common forensic equipments? They are computers, printers, scanners, spare hard drives, RAID arrays, digital camera, and write blockers. Acquisition, the physical possession of something or contracting to take possession. As the English meaning of acquisition suggests, we want to possess physically something, or we have taken a contract by which we can have a possession of something. Forensic analysts are asked to acquire hard drives, computers, media, and other items on site. With any investigation, analysts should record what physical evidence they recover. Physical evidence and computer forensics can help recreate as proof the incident scene and relationship between any victims and the suspects. Saying that if somebody's net banking account has been hacked, so who is a victim? Victim is the one whose account has been hacked. Suspects, there are many suspects. To find out who actually has done it, for that the computer forensics can help to recreate the incident scene, what had happened in that case, and then we can find out who is the attacker. When we are doing acquisition, which are the steps to be followed? The first is collect and document the evidence. The second is protect the chain of custody. The third is identify, transport, and store the evidence. And fourth is duplicate the suspected evidence. This is the diagram says physical evidence. There is a cycle between victim, suspect, and incident scene, saying that suspect has attacked the victim, and for that an incident scene can be created. Once the crime has been done, there needs to be some investigation to be conducted. So what is needed? Anti-static bag, Faraday bags, cable ties, evidence bags, anti-static bubble wrap, evidence tape, anti-static packing material, packing tape, various sizes of study boxes. Because when we are doing computer forensics, we are going to deal with hard drives, CD drives, DVD drives, pen drives, CPU. So we need this kind of materials for the investigation. To collect and handle evidence, record everything through digital camera. Document the condition of computer systems, attachments, cables, and all electronic media. Photograph desks, stables, even plaques or nameplates that shows who sits in a specific location. Take a picture of location of mouse. Now, one might be wondering how would that help? So if the mouse is on the left side of the computer, then the person is left-handed. If mouse is on the mouse is on the right hand side of the computer, then the person is right-handed. Use a camera to take pictures of any screen settings that are visible on a running system. Document internal storage devices and hardware configurations. So hard devices make, model, size, jumper setting, location and drive interfaces, as well as internal components such as sound card, video card and network card. Record identifying numbers such as MAC and begin to build a proper chain of custody. Then maintain the integrity of the evidence. Identify and tag all evidence before placing it into the storage. And you can make your own evidence tags. We will see next how to make evidence tags and and also you can prepare your own documents or you can purchase from variety of companies. Need to copy the hard drives or fixed disks and give copy to analyst for investigation. There are 3 steps, but before going to the 3 steps, what we have to do is we have to copy the hard drives or fixed disks and give copy to the analyst for investigation. There are 3 steps. For that, remove the drive from the suspect's computer. Connect the suspect's drive to a write blocker and fingerprint it. Fingerprint it means just find out what all things are associated with it. Use a clean wipe drive to make a copy of suspect's computer. For evidence to be admissible in court, it must be relevant, legally permissible, reliable, properly identified and properly preserved. Next is drive removal hashing. Forensic duplication, that is suspect's hard drive remains unchanged. Suspect's computer should not go through normal boot process. All the evidence those are gathered should be kept in the pristine state, that is unspoiled state. Logical software based or physical hardware based write blockers must be used. That means whatever evidence we have collected, now nobody should be able to write on that. Write blockers prevent data from being written to the suspect's drive. Example of software write blocker is PDBlock. So you can try this PDBlock and find out how the write blocker works. Going ahead with drive removal hashing, hardware write blockers allow read-only access via hardware device. So you can read more on this URL www.digitalintelligence.com/forensic-write-blockers.php. The hardware device connects 2 drives and facilitates the copy process while ensuring the integrity of suspect's hard drive. Now suspect's hard drive can be placed in an external drive enclosure. There are popular formats for this device that range from USB, Thunderbolt or even FireWire and SCSI. Use a cryptographic routine to ensure the integrity of original and copied data. How the tag can be prepared? The tag description is given. Tag 138 saying that tags the Western Digital W307AA hard drive, serial number 1129798, and the size is 40 GB. So in earlier discussion, we talked that the tags must be created. It can be created by by own self, or can be taken from a company. So this is how the tag can be created. Tag 139, that is IBM ThinkPad 600E Pentium 3 2400 MHz, serial number is 78TXD53. You can go through the example tag 140 and tag 141. Assuming that the hard drive contains the evidence and it has to be removed from a laptop, there are several companies, those make the adapters that enable the connection of the devices to the standard IDE or SATA interface. These adapters are available from many online vendors and are good addition to the forensic toolkits. Now, the whole purpose is to remove the hard drive from the suspect's machine. How it can be done? It can be done through network duplication. Now this network duplication process requires both devices, the original drive and the hardware used for duplication. They have network cards and share a common protocol such as TCP/IP. Now it is best to use a crossover cable or small switch to gain connectivity. Again, when you are doing this, have a caution so that you do not modify files on suspect's computer. So evidence need to be preserved, so take care that nothing is being modified. Now there is a need to check that the target drive is forensically sterile, means there is no data written on that drive. Idea is clear that we are creating a copy of a suspect's hard drive, and for which we have a new drive which should be forensically sterile. That means no data should reside on it. And it has to be determined that the type of image that will be required. The target disk must be wiped, and it has to be decided that whether the physical or logical copy can be made. So next question arises, how to do drive wiping. Any drive used for the collection of evidence must be thoroughly cleaned, that means wiped before its usage. Drive wiping programs, how do they operate? They operate by overwriting all addressable locations on the disk. They not only remove the data, but they make sure that data becomes unrecoverable. Forensic analyst can verify that there is a clean media available. Drive wiping programs usually overwrite all addressable locations on the disk. Drive wiping programs may go through several passes so that there is not even 0.0001% chance of data recovery. What they provide for the forensic analyst is verifiably clean media. What we wanted to do, we wanted to create a logical and physical copies. So the smallest unit of storage on the disk is known as a block on Unix machine or cluster on a Windows machine. The cluster size as defined by Microsoft is usually based on the total capacity of the drive. As the drive capacity increases, so does the cluster size. NTMS formatted drives have default cluster size of 4 kilobytes. When a computer writes files to the drive and the total file size does not come out to be even multiple of cluster size, extra space must be used in the next cluster to hold the file size. Saying that the cluster is of 4 kilobytes, now we need this file, we have a file size of 18 kilobytes, then 4 into 4 16 kilobytes plus 16 kilobytes. So 4 clusters can be allocated, but we still need an extra space for 2 kilobytes. So next cluster would be assigned. Next cluster would be of size 4 kilobytes. So out of that 2 kilobytes will be used and 2 kilobytes will remain empty. So the next cluster is called partially used. And this remaining space in the cluster is called file slack. You can see in the figure, so there is a cluster of 64 KB. So we can see in the screen, on the screen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 clusters. So 64 into 6, that makes 64 into 6, 384 it makes, but we need only 140 KB out of it. So we will use the first cluster with 64 kilobytes. Then we will use the next 64 kilobytes, so it makes 128 kilobytes. Now what is remaining? 12 kilobytes are remaining, so we will only use 12 kilobytes out of the next 64 kilobytes. So there is a slack space created and the remaining clusters are called the free space. Now slack space is containing some remnants from the previous disk writes. Usually those are not accessible because there is an EOF marker, that is end of file marker, and beyond that one cannot read. But there are always a way to examine that space and recover the data. And that is usually done through the forensic software package. The type of drive imaging you perform will determine whether the information held within the slack space is copied. Physical drive is the drive itself. Before you format a hard drive, it must be partitioned. So partitioning is nothing but we are preparing the areas which now then can be accessed by the operating system. A drive can be partitioned and formatted maybe into one logical drive or several logical drives. On your computer you may have a C drive or you may have C drive, D drive. The format command is usually used in DOS and Windows based system to examine and configure the parameters. Disk management can be used to partition the information on the latest versions of the Windows. Now, next we want to talk about logical copies, and logical copy means you are copying all files and folders. When the files and folders are duplicated, checksums will match, but the information is not necessarily restored in the same location as the original, nor is the free space and file slack space copied. The understanding is when we are doing a logical copy, always the files and folders are copied, so their duplicate copy has been created with matching of the checksum. The logical copy will not reproduce or copy this information. At this point, what is important to understand? What is being copied and what is not being copied. And it depends on whom? It depends on duplication process which is being performed. If someone wants the exact copy or exact duplication, he or she needs to perform a physical copy. Now there are certain tools available. There is something called SafeBack that creates a physical copy. Physical copy, once again let me emphasize, it is not only the copy of files and folders, but it copies the whole thing at a bit level. So bit level means the very primitive, the low level, all things would be copied. So these programs, that is SafeBake program, duplicate all information down to the track, sector and cluster of original. The information that has been gathered falls into two categories: free space, that is a space on the drive that is not being used, space that has always been empty, or space that was earlier used for the file and now they are deleted or moved. If a file or information was stored there at one time, the information may still be there. Even though it cannot be accessed or read through normal process, some programs still can retrieve it. When I talk about files like space, the smallest unit of storage on the drive is a cluster, as we knew. If the cluster size is 512 bytes, if there is some space left at the end of the cluster, that portion of the cluster is outside the use of normal operation. And from the previous drive, there are some data left on it. So data that survived previous formats and other information that someone could have attempted to hide or destroy. Imaging the drive. Imaging is the process of making a physical copy of a hard drive or disk. Imaging, the other word is cloning the operating system, personal configuration, data file setting and all slack. There are certain imaging softwares available, but there is a need to be comfortable with that software, investigate its feature and make a decision which method of duplication is reasonable and prudent. Whatever method you choose should meet certain criteria. The first is the evidence is not tampered with, the process is documented and repeatable, the chain of evidence is recorded. Next, we want to talk about authentication. Anytime the data is handled, one has to ensure that data remains unchanged. If we talk about the life cycle of evidence, it includes discovery and recognition. So find out what are the evidence. So discover the evidence. They have to be recognized from the available things. Then protect them, record them. Collection cycle includes collect all relevant storage media, make an image of the hard disk before removing power, print out the screen, avoid disgaussing the equipment. After collection cycle, there is a cycle called identification. It involves tagging and marking. The next is preservation, that says protect the magnetic media from erasure, store in a proper environment. Next cycle is transportation, then presentation in a court of law and return of evidence to owner. What is the primary way to ensure that the data remains unchanged? For that, use integrity algorithms. What does an integrity algorithm do? It fingerprints the original drive and the forensically produced copy. Integrity provides for the correctness of information. Integrity also ensures that users of information to have confidence in correctness. Data gathered can be distorted in many ways, but computer also has various ways to protect data that include parity, checksums, redundancy. It is very clear that integrity is a prime focal point and this is a very important security concept. So for that, it is commonly called CIA triad. CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So to ensure integrity, there is a MD5 sum tool which can be used from unxutils.sourceforge.net. What we need to do in MD5 sum, we need to pass the password file, then check what is the MD5. MD5 is a hash which is generated. If you are giving an input, it would generate a fixed length of hash value. So we are inputting the password txt file, and we are generating the hash. Now we are making one character change in this password file, again generating the hash. Comparing and looking, they are totally different, so we can be sure that the password file is modified and integrity is not maintained. All these procedures need to be documented. That is a very good procedure, and it should be stored offline in a secure location. There is a tripwire program which is for checking the file integrity. Dr. Eugene Spafford from Purdue University, he developed for Unix platform system. Next is trace evidence analysis. Analysis is the process of examining the evidence. Forensic analysts, they make 2 copies of the original drive and work with one of the copies. The forensic investigators use many different programs when they are doing the analysis. In the trace evidence, they would be checking that incident did occur. Means when they are checking that whether that incident occur, the answer should be affirmative, yes. If that evidence occur, then there should be some trace evidence. So whenever 2 objects come into their contact, there is a transfer of material that takes place, and that is called Locard's exchange principle, and that is usually almost universally accepted by all forensic analysts. This principle says that no matter how hard someone tries, some trace evidence always remains. The modern computers have been complex, and they have left the forensic analyst. They need to look at many places for finding out the existence. Even though suspects can make recovery harder by deleting files and caches, some trace evidence is always left. By examining the Slack space, cache registry, browser history, and page sys file, the investigator would definitely find some evidence left. File slack occurs when a cluster is partially used, as we have seen. So it might not be used to currently hold a file, but there are chances that information is left from the previous disk writes, or information the system has used for padding. These remnants are valuable for investigator. If this information is beyond the UF marker, tools that allow examination and recovery of this data need to be available to the investigators. This information can be extracted by using the hex editor or other tools, because whatever remnants are there, they might be in the form of hex data. So there are certain tools called Access Data's Forensic Toolkit, Guidance's NCase, Norton's Disk Editor, NTI's GetSlack, and Xway's Software's WinHex. The best approach is to use some type of automated tool to locate the suspected evidence. There might be need to search for words that are specific to the investigation, such as terms associated with drugs, hacking, and other questionable activities. What is the actual process being adopted? That all depends on the what is the case that is being investigated. There may be some deductive reasoning and search for specific word or file extension types. There may be a search for passwords. People usually like names they can remember, such as family names, friends' names, hobbies, and so forth. So suspect's work area, so to finding out the password, investigator has to look around for the suspect's work area and observe it closely for clues such as sports, photos, hobbies, and others, or pet names, phone numbers, and other identifiable items. Cache files are another area for investigations, and cache is used for temporary storage. When a program or application needs information, it typically checks the cache first. If the information is not found, then it goes into some other area. So to check the caching, try the command arp/a, and one can find out the corresponding IP to MAC address that is used in the communication. In Windows, the information is initially cached for 2 minutes. If the systems communicated within that time, it would be cached for additionally 10 minutes. There is something called browser cache. They are the files. Those are the temporary files that may contain images, text from recently visited web pages. Even browser settings can be done to determine how long the files are saved and the cache's default size. The history log saves a file of sites visited with the associated dates and time. If you are using Windows platform, Internet Explorer stores the cache information in a file called index.dat. What other information is commonly cached? Usually Microsoft Office applications have a built-in save feature. Individual is usually working on either documents, spreadsheets, or other applications, and temporary versions are stored on the hard drive in temporary folder. These temp variables are set when the computer boots up. So how to find out where the temporary file location is in Windows? Default location is set to the path corresponding to the user. So if you want to check on your computer, open a command prompt and simply type a set command. Check the output. There would be something called temp. In my screenshot, it is set to see users, laptop, app data, local, and temp. If we talk about Microsoft Office documents, they hold lots of residual data. Those are enough so that Microsoft offers a tool called Remove Hidden Data to scrub such documents. You can check the Microsoft site for that. Now, if that is not enough information to get you started, then browse to the recent documents folder to get a list of all documents and files that have been recently opened. This folder will not only provide you file names but also dates, time, and when the date and time when the file was last modified. There is something called email evidence. In email evidence, one has to dig deeper into the disk to find trace evidence. There should be a low-level search for strings of data that may now reside in Slack or free space. If a suspect is in a corporate system, there are chances that email is backed up on a server or may have been stored off-site. If you are using Unix, then email is saved in a text file. Save an email in the text file. Use a grep command to find out a particular pattern. If you are using Outlook email, then check the PST files, and in the PST file you can check out the suspect's PST file and load it on the another computer that has the default PST file erased. When the Outlook is restarted, it will prompt the user for the location of the missing PST file. Just point to the suspect's PST file and allow it to load. Another option to view the suspect's email with a forensic tool, that is Access Data's forensic toolkit and other toolkit. Usually VCF files are used to store the context. They contain names, addresses, phone numbers, page numbers and more. So look for the star.vcf and all files with VCF extensions, and it can be viewed with Notepad. One can even examine the email headers to determine the true source of emails. Hackers excel at using email to run social engineering scams. Spammers, identity thieves and others also use email to solicit potential victims, and terrorists use email to communicate with their colleagues. Email headers are usually they contain the sender's information. So email headers are used to identify the sender of the message. It includes IP address, sender, reply to, and so on. These email source names can be easily spoofed or forged. What's harder to hide is the true IP address that the message originated from and the IP addresses that the message transmitted through on its way to the destination. So look at the email header. The information in the received from header which shows the path the email actually took. Last or bottom IP address is actually the first one that was put on. So this identifies the IP address of the server that sent the message. Then go on and move toward the target or recipient. Once the sender's IP address has been obtained, use the Whois database to identify the owner of the IP address. There are something called deleted and overridden files. File deleted, they may be in the recycle bin. The clusters or blocks in which the information resides are marked as unallocated space. Even if clusters are used, these remnants of the old data may remain in the slack space. The other trace evidence to investigator are logon and connection times. Usually network administrator has all these details, so data backups from the administrator should be taken, and this has the potential source of potential information. There are certain legal constraints when evidences are collected. So law enforcement has many more rights when performing a search than do private citizens. So develop acceptable use policies, they are called AUPs. And this document should specify precisely what employees are allowed to do with company system and what is prohibited. What will happen to them if they break the rules? This AUP should also specify what level of privacy employees can expect and that the company maintains the right to monitor, review and analyze computer systems. Always it is best to check with the organization's legal department for what can and cannot be done should any type of search and seizures be required. Many times the informations are stored remotely on a server or on the another network devices. Then backups, audit trails and other information gathered from the suspect's computer can help determine the location of hidden or remote data. Users area for disk, zip cartridges, external hard drives, PC cards and any other form of external media can be checked. Make the data, make all the evidence to be read only so that you don't modify it. Hidden techniques. There are searching for files and folders on a suspect's computer can be one of the more interesting parts of forensics. Usually there are drives which block the average user from hiding the file. There is one common hiding technique, that is to place the information in the obscure location such as C, WinNT, System32, OS2 and drivers. So usually average users are blocked from finding the file. A system search will quickly defeat this futile attempt at data hiding. It will search for BMP, TIFF, DOC and XLS files. If you are examining a Linux computer, use the grep command to search for the drives. Usually in the Windows operating system, there is an attrib command. Use +H to make the file hidden, and this would make a file invisible in the command line environment. If you want to see the hidden files, open a browser window, choose the tools, folder option, view and show hidden files. This will display all files and folders even though they are set with the attribute +H. There is something called attrib/s command that lists the file attributes, and /s function lists all files in all subdirectories, and then you can use a redirect operator greater than to output this to a text file. There are advanced file hiding techniques. If we are using NTFS, it is a file system which enables security to be implemented. This is being done by alternate data streams called ADS. The file size does not change, and without knowing the name of the streamed file or having specialized software tools, the stream file is invisible, meaning that ADS, alternate data streams, generate the streams out of the file, and without specialized tool, the stream files are always invisible. Steganography is the art of secret writing. So now we are in the hiding information. We are talking about steganography, where messages are hidden in the image or sound files. The attacker knows that there is a secret message and attempts to decipher it, but in steganography, the object is to keep the attacker from knowing that a secret message exists. The term steganography derives from a Greek word that means covered writing. For example, you are using a bitmap to spread data across various bits within a file. Each dot is called a pixel, and pixel has its own color, whether it's no color saying 0, all colors saying 255. I have given you the example of sound file which contains the byte information 225, 338, 74 and 130. The binary number associated with 225 is 1110001. The binary number with 38, 74 and 130 are given. Now if you want to hide the decimal 7 saying 0111, then first hide 0 into the first byte, that is 225. So now 225 becomes 224 and its binary is 1110000. Now 38 becomes 39 because we have changed the last bit to 1 instead of 0. 74 becomes 75 and 130 becomes 131. So we wanted to hide 4 bits which we have hidden them into 4 different bytes. So sound will not be deteriorated and nobody will find out that there is some data going in the sound file. Though data hidden is always less than the total size of the carrier, but if someone needs to hide hundreds or thousands of files, the process is too time consuming. And the second drawback of steganography is that the possession or transmission of hundreds of carrier files could in many cases raise suspicion unless the sender is a photographer or artist. The last is anti-forensic. It says the process of running tools and routines that attempt to thwart the forensic process. So to summarize this module, I started my discussion from computer forensic. After definition, we looked at how a physical and logical copy can be created. We emphasized that integrity should be maintained. And then we said how dangerous the slack space and free space is if they are not properly deleted. Then I talked about the data hiding techniques, and last we saw the steganography, and we concluded that steganography is a time consuming process if the large data needs to be hidden, and we have to send also many carrier files. So if somebody is sending so many carrier files, it would be under the suspicion. Thank you.